Hey, 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 welcome back. I'm your host, Emily Erb, and I am so excited because, as I promised earlier, I have a guest on, and I'm just really, really excited because she has some really amazing gifts that I have benefited from. And from that, I was like, I need to have her on. And it's around a topic that I wasn't even aware of that I wanted to learn more about and learn more about myself. So, before we introduce her, I just want to give you a little background with my friend Ranya. Um, She's always been fascinated by the human experience and how it is shaped through trauma. So there we go. That's what we're going to talk about today. A little Easter egg. Her fascination started at a really young age when she began asking, why would someone do that? What makes people act the way they do? So she began her own self discovery because she started asking those questions about herself. And the more inner work she did, the more she discovered, I believe that all of our experiences are rooted in trauma, either generationally or from our own childhood. And it is a constant cycle on repeat until you take a step back and break it. For that reason, she decided to create a program and conduct one on one sessions to help guide others through the inner work so they can break the cycles. And I am so excited to officially introduce a friend that I just met in December, but I feel like we've known each other forever. Her name is Ranya. Ranya, thank you so much for being on today. And listen, this is her first podcast ever. So let's welcome her. And yeah, let's get started.
Hi, I'm so excited to be here. Thank you for having me. Um, I'm so happy to be doing this with you, and I'm so happy that we connected. I know that we connected through BBD Live, and it was definitely like divine timing and divine intervention. So I'm super grateful for that, and thank you so much for having me on your podcast today. They're like, I know I keep saying super excited because I truly am.
Same here. I am too. I am very, very super excited. Um, it was totally, what's the word? Kismic? Is that the right word?
Mhm. Yes.
How we
Yeah.
met. It was at BBD Live. It was a
Yeah.
huge mastermind, 3 day mastermind. That was
Yeah.
your first BBD Live there too?
Yes. Yes, it was. It
Okay.
was.
And first,
It was.
that was the first experience that I've ever had on that level with 1,000 entrepreneurs and
Yep.
having our mentor James Wedmore there and his wife now Jenny. And it was crazy. But the very first day, I was walking in the hotel and I see this long line. And of course, my curiosity, I'm like, what is this long line? Do I need to be in this long line? And that's where I happened to I ran into you there and I was like,
Yeah.
what's this line for? And you're like, it's for coffee. I was like, oh, okay. And we just started connecting. And it was like, you already blew my mind at that point when we connected. And I was like, okay, we need to connect more and see where this goes. So,
Yeah, 100%. And it's so funny because you and I didn't really spend time during BBD Live after that. It
mm-mm.
was just like, hey, and then I think we bumped into each other again the last day. We
Yes.
hugged it out, and
Yes.
then we're like, oh, we're definitely gonna connect.
Yep.
And then we ended up connecting on Instagram, and then it just went from there. So it's just like it's great because like we both got to have our own experiences with BBD Live and then like reconnect and share those experiences and then just like um it was like picking up where we left off in a sense. It didn't
Yes.
even feel like awkward or like we were just getting to know each other, whatever. It was just like, hey, hey, okay, and then just went from there. Um, so yeah,
I
it's
feel
awesome.
like it feels like we've known each other forever.
Right?
I mean,
Yeah.
you're even now. I added you to my list of people to call when I'm going for a walk. And that's
Yeah.
like a sacred like call list that I have that there's only certain people that make that roster.
Yeah.
And when we walked and talked, like I could have stayed on the treadmill for a few more hours, but I had to get home. But yeah, it's been really amazing. You never know. Like you never know
Yeah.
when you run into someone and what
So
that's how that's gonna turn out. So
unfold. Yeah. It's you come across people for a reason, and sometimes it's for a season and sometimes it's for a lifetime. So it's like you take what you get from that and like your lessons and whatnot. And sometimes it's just complete. And it's not even like, you know, awkward or you stop talking to a person or you get into a fight or anything. It's just like, thank you for the experience that I gained from, this communication or this friendship or whatnot. And then you move on. And it's
yeah,
just like you have new experiences. So it's very like I don't even know how to describe it, but it's just like when you take a step back and you're like some people that you don't even remember coming across, but there was something that happened there that landed with you and it actually like paved the way into like you continuing on your journey and making progress and moving forward. And it was just that one small interaction, whether it was like on a in a grocery store online or passing them in the parking lot. It really like it does still make an impact, whether it's small or large, but it all just connects. It just like weaves into this web of like who you are and you just go with that.
yeah, I totally
Yeah.
agree with that. And I'm so grateful that that happened for us
I
and
know.
that we were just, and I'm curious too, before we really get into it, I'm curious, what were your intentions when you went to BBD Live? Because one of mine was making connections and meeting other women that I could collaborate with. And you happen to be one of them. And so I'm curious if you had similar intentions with
Yeah.
BBD.
Yes. Because I actually signed up for BBD during COVID, like in 2020.
Okay.
And I just kept in and out. And I was just like, I'll start the modules, then I'll stop, and just like constant, like fear-based decisions and just like these limiting beliefs. And like, with everything that happened with COVID, that just took a toll on the whole world
Hmm.
and everything else. And then I had some health issues. So it was just like a certain things that just kept happening. And it was like for me to experience those things to show myself that even though this happened, it happened for me. And look how I've come out on the other side of it. Then I
Hmm.
didn't give up and I just kept trekking forward. Um, so with BBD, the reason why I like my intention was I wanted to be surrounded by people that like you and I had this conversation before where like you have a conversation with someone about like your thoughts and what you're experiencing and what you're thinking without judgment or criticism. And it's not
Hmm.
to say that, I'm getting criticized when I talk to friends about it or judged or anything, but it's different when you have those conversations with people that are in the same space as you, like the way that they think. And even though it's different, because we
Hmm.
all, experience things differently, but to be able to talk about like trauma or manifesting or, your higher self or
Hmm.
spoon bending,
Yeah.
and it's just
Yeah.
like, and not be looked at like, what the hell's going on?
Right. Like we're
So,
crazy. Hmm.
yes,
Yeah.
exactly. So I was like, I had to go to BBD Live because I just wanted to be surrounded by people that are on the same path as me in a sense, where they want to be, like create a digital business, where they want to serve people, and how they want to do it. So being able to go to BBD Live and just, build these connections and meet people and hear their stories and being able to relate to where they were and
Hmm.
where they are now. It's just like it was a truly like magical experience, and I'm so grateful that I got to do it. Um, but yeah, my intention was to meet people that are trying to build the same things as me, even though they're doing it in different ways.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
And just putting yourself in the room with people that are similar,
Hmm.
like-minded, and getting the energy. I mean, that was just
Yeah.
unreal. The
Yeah.
energy and the emotions, and yeah, and I think just for any goal that people want to reach, it feels so much, I don't want to say easier, but it just helps being in a room with other people who are
Yeah.
on the same path. And
Yeah.
when you don't feel alone in it, because a lot of times when fear comes up, we tend to isolate ourselves and we tend to just pull away, and then we live in this like fear and shame, and it feels so scary, and it feels like I'm the only one that's happening, that this is happening to. But when you can put yourself in a room or in a community, because we also, then the people that we met there, we created our own community. We just kept
Yeah.
adding. And so it's been so great. Even when we're choosing a hard thing to do, a hard path, it's always so comforting in a way
Yeah.
to like have that connection that we're not alone, and then just
Hmm.
sharing our wins and our struggles. And I love community. And that was really cool that we could actually meet then the people that we've been seeing on Zoom for
Yeah.
how long, and then be in
Yeah.
a room together, which was incredibly powerful.
Yeah.
So,
And it's like, and like you've heard the phrase, like you are the five people that you hang out with. So it's like
mhm,
when you're hanging out with people that are not at the level you want to be, you tend to like dim yourself
yep.
to be able to connect to the five. Otherwise, you're just like an outsider. So it's
Hmm.
like by up leveling in a sense, and surrounding yourself with five people that you admire or that you're striving to become on their level,
Hmm.
then it just like gives you that boost and that bump up there.
Yeah, absolutely. That's why I love mentorship. You and
Yeah.
I obviously value that. We have invested a lot of
Yeah.
time and resources into mentorship, and
Yeah.
that will always be a value of mine.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right. So let's talk about trauma. Trauma, trauma, trauma. I feel like that's kind of like a hot topic. I feel like, and maybe that's just because something that I've been really practicing and learning different ways to work through trauma and to heal trauma
Mhm.
for me. And so now I just see it everywhere. So it's what you focus on will grow, and it's the reality
Yeah.
you create for yourself. So
Yeah.
maybe it isn't a hot topic. I don't know. I feel like it is. And so I would love your professional expertise of what your definition of trauma is, because I think so many of us are unaware that we've experienced trauma, or that we are making decisions based on past trauma. And kind of tell us a little bit more, some ways that we could maybe identify it and be like, oh my gosh, like that's past trauma. And I wasn't even aware that I had it.
Yeah. Um, so for me, trauma is, and like I can always like read you the definition off Google, but trauma is, it's something that it creates a limiting belief, it creates a distress, and it creates a trigger in your life through an event that you have experienced in childhood, through generational trauma, which I've learned. And because sometimes I'm like, why am I feeling this way? Why am I picking this up? And then it's, you know, I've done exercises and stuff where I've actually gone back to like that timeline, or had a like spiritual practices that have helped me get to the root. I've also done like EMDR therapy that's been beneficial. I've done therapy that is literally about like it was a trauma specialist therapist. I've also done like hypnosis. I've done meditations. I've done breath work. There's so many different modalities and so many different ways of getting to the root of it and experiencing it, and the realizations that come from it. It all just starts to dwindle up to the surface. And for me, it actually became a physical experience where I started having dissociation spells that they're labeled as like non-epileptical seizures. And the way I experienced that was like my whole body would shut down. Like I can see you and hear you. I just couldn't respond. I couldn't move. Um, and it was happening at an alarming rate where it was like happening like 5 times a day where I had to, you know, stop working for a while. And it was just like I felt so helpless and I felt so weak in a sense because I didn't know what was happening. I didn't know what was causing it. And I was like in and out of hospitals where it was like I saw a neurologist, like my poor dad, like rushed me in and out of hospitals just to like figure out what was going on. And I remember a doctor saying to me once, like, did you have a traumatic event happen to you when you were a kid? And I was just like, I started thinking of like the worst, like, God forbid, like I got raped or something. And like, I was
And you
just like,
just blocked it out or something.
yeah.
Mm,
So I started to like dig deep and like try to figure out like what's going on and why is this happening? And the experiences I've had where like I've connected to my grandfather I've never met before, and he died a long time ago. And like he kept coming up during what was happening. And then I just started really sitting with things because the other thing I was doing, and I think what was causing the dissociation, is because I was trying to shove the emotions and the
mhm.
experiences down. Like I wasn't acknowledging them, I wasn't letting them come up to the surface. Um, and I wasn't giving them the light of day. So you're
Mhm.
trying to shove something and you just keep shoving it and like you just keep trying to bury it into this darkness. It comes to a point where it's like, okay, there's no more space. Like
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
overflowing. What am I doing with all of this?
And what you
Um,
resist will persist, right? And
exactly.
until it like boils over. It's like a pressure cooker.
Exactly, exactly. And so I was like, okay, well, shoving it down and not paying any mind to what's going on is not making it go away. So we're just going to sit with this and
Did
let's see what happens.
Can I ask you this? I'm
Yeah.
really curious. The doctor that asked you about, like, do you have you experienced past trauma? Was that a medical doctor or was that a therapist or what kind of doctor asked you that question?
There was a medical doctor in
Okay.
like one of the hospital visits that I had because it was
Wow.
getting worse. And they were
Okay.
like, your brain waves are fine because they did like they tested my brain. They put this whole like thing on there. Everything was coming back negative. All the tests, they did EKG, they did
Mhm.
everything, and everything was coming back negative. And he was like, everything came back fine. We're releasing you. And then he was like, maybe you had a traumatic experience. Like, have you had a traumatic experience when you were a kid? And
Wow.
I was like, yeah.
I think that's so amazing because I think sometimes we look at the symptom, right? It's like
Hmm.
you have a headache and you're like, "Oh, I'll just take ibuprofen. I'll treat it with
Yeah.
medication."
Yeah.
And
And then label
sometimes,
it.
yeah,
Yeah.
right. But then, like a couple hours later, the ibuprofen wears off and you still have this headache.
Yeah.
And it's really the headache is just the cause of the root of the problem, which is maybe
Hmm.
you're dehydrated, right? Like if you
Yeah.
just drank more water and you treated the root cause, then the symptom would go away. And so I think that's actually really incredible that a doctor, after running the test to make sure physically you were okay, right? Like there was nothing wrong
Hmm.
with your brain, there was
Yeah.
nothing medically wrong. It was what was happening, from what I'm understanding, it was past trauma that was
Hmm.
creating these symptoms for you.
Yeah. And sometimes it's like it's more subtle than that because
Hmm.
it's stacking. So sometimes it's like when you just feel the need to isolate or when you walk past a specific grocery store and you don't know why you get this weird vibe from it. It can be
What about
small
anger?
triggers.
What about like, because I feel like sometimes The other day my kids were playing out in the snow, and I've told them I set boundaries for, hey, please just take your shoes off when you're playing in the snow. I don't want snow all over around the house. And I feel like that's like a reasonable boundary to set with your kids.
Yeah.
Um, but sometimes they don't follow through, which that's to be expected. They're still young children.
Yeah.
They're going to push boundaries, right? And they're not thinking about like cause and effect.
Hmm.
So, my youngest did it, and there was just snow, like a path of snow. And I was like, why do I feel so much anger right now? And I'm like, this really isn't a big deal. Like, if I'm ranking, like, is this a big problem, medium problem, or small problem? Like, this really is a small problem, but it feels like a big problem.
Yeah.
And I wonder if that is like sometimes with anger, when that comes up with something that really isn't a big deal, I wonder if that's some like past trauma
Yeah.
um, that's just like unhealed, like an unhealed
Hmm.
wound that it's like my brain is looking to solve something that it can't solve because it happened 20 years ago.
Yeah, it's like a trigger point, like the
Yeah.
trigger from something from your childhood. And it's also the resistance of reliving that cycle. So
Mm,
it's like because you're doing the work where you're trying to break the cycle and you're trying to create a different life for yourself and your kids than the one that you had growing up. So you get angry because it's still that residual of the old
hmm.
cycle of like how your childhood was. And then the resistance is because you're asking the questions. So the fact that you're trying to break the cycle and you're trying to create a different life for your kids and for yourself, you're asking the question, why is this making me angry? That's
Hmm.
a realization. And that's the resistance to repeating the old cycle. So sitting with that and actually acknowledging that and asking yourself the question, like, why is this making me angry? And then sitting with that question to get to the root of what happened with you
Mm.
that left you feeling that way. And now it's also like you don't want to repeat it with your kids.
Right. Right.
So it's like a push or pull. So it's like it'd be easier to just like act like my parents did when I was a kid and I left a trail of snow.
Hmm.
But it's harder to be like, this is not what I want. Okay, now what can I do to break that cycle? And it's like going through the actual work and the resistance and all of that. And then at the other end, it's just like this magical thing. And it's not to say it's like a one size fits all or like an easy fix or all of a sudden, you got to the root of this. It's just gonna, heal everything and take away everything. But it's a start. And
Yeah.
it's the same like stacking and like rewiring of your brain because you're talking about decades of stacking of certain memories, certain emotions, labeling those memories with specific emotions.
Hmm.
So it's the same concept. Like, earlier you were saying you take Advil or ibuprofen for a headache because it's been labeled that way. It's not like, okay, um, like I was having a conversation with a friend and she mentioned that the Super Bowl, most of the commercials were about taking the GLP-1 shots.
Mm-hmm.
And I had like a previous conversation with her about where they're labeling weight loss as it needs to be medicated. And
Yes.
to those people that actually, need the medication, it's helping them. And, that's great. But it's like, it's getting to a point where they're making eating healthy such an inconvenience and like unattainable that you're going to go directly to
To
the
medication.
injections and
Yeah.
diet pills and all of that because they're putting that as like the only solution, like they're slowly
Yeah.
conditioning to make it that that's the only solution, and they're labeling it with like fat loss, feel great, look better. So it's like all these like conditioning words, and you're just like, okay, well, I've been trying to lose weight for all these years, and I've been trying all of these things, and nothing's working. That's it. Like, I have to do this now. This is my only solution. And
Yeah.
then it's going to get to a point where it's like, you don't even need to try anymore. here's a solution.
Yeah. Wow. I honestly, I never even thought about that. But with you bringing that up, I was actually working with a client in a fitness center that I work in as a side job. And she has been taking a GLP-1 for at least a year now. And she, as we're talking, because I was like, well, what's your plan? You know, like, how long are you going to be on this for? What does that look like? And she has this belief that she has a disease. And in order to cure this disease, she needs to take this medicine. And she believes that she needs to be on this medicine for life.
Yeah.
And I remember being like very triggered by that in a way because I just was like, wow, like how did we get to a point where we now believe that we have this belief that we need to have medication in order to hit certain body goals, you know? And
Yeah.
like you said, there are medications that people need, right? And we're not hating on medication, my
No,
goodness, like
no.
yes. But yeah, that's really interesting perspective when we look at it that way.
Yeah.
Very
Like
good.
even with me, it's like non-epileptical seizures, but they still want to give me seizure medication. I was just like,
Did you
you
choose to
know,
take medication for that?
I believe I did at first
Yeah.
because I was just like overwhelmed and like,
Scared, yeah.
you trust the doctors to know what to do and to come up with a solution. So at first I did, but then it wasn't necessarily serving me because I felt like it was just what's the word? Like toning me down.
Mm,
And at one point, they prescribed me Xanax because I was having like panic attacks and really bad anxiety. And I took it once, okay? And I sat there. I was still panicking on the inside,
mm-hmm.
but on the outside, I was so calm and like so whatever. But on the inside, it was just like calm panic. I was still having the thoughts. I was still like, I felt trapped in my own body
Mm,
where I was like, this is not a solution. Like, I'm not going to
yeah.
be like this where I'm still battling on the inside. And then all of a sudden, I'm going to be on Xanax for the rest of my life. No, thanks.
Yeah.
So then it was like doing more of the inner work and, getting support from therapy, getting support from doing things like Manifestation Babe, or I ended up getting a coach. Her name is also Emily, which is so
Mhm.
funny. She has her program Rise to Her. So I just started looking at different ways and different ventures as to how I can serve myself, serve my mind, body, and soul
Mhm.
without putting temporary band-aids
Mhm.
on it. And then because yeah, medication might help stop the seizures or medication might do something, but first of all, it's temporary. And second of all, what about all the side effects?
Right.
So for me, it was like, this is not working for me. And I need to get to the root of what's causing it. I need to sit with that and figure it out. And it's not to say like I have anything against people taking medication because some people really need medication. You have
Absolutely.
people that have like really bad depression or bipolar disorder or, so many different uh, illnesses and so many
Mhm.
things going on in the world that for some people, medication is the only thing that helps.
Mhm.
But for me, it just didn't serve me because I felt like I was just dimming myself versus shedding a light on the darkness to light my path out. So,
Yeah.
and that's why I was like, no, there has to be another way. So I just started and like, I feel like I've always been so obsessed with like the human like experience and how the human mind works and like, just the way people react. Like I'm fascinated right now about like mirroring and body language and like being able to read body language. And
Oh.
yeah,
Is that
and
like the
I
guy, was that like Alex at BBD Live where he can read faces?
yeah, similar to that, but it's
Okay.
also like so like let's say like you and I are having a conversation and I lean back.
Uh-huh.
There's actually a reason why like I think it means like I'm no longer interested in the conversation. It's so like it's very fascinating. So
Really? Gosh, now I
yeah,
have to think about like when I
yeah,
lean back. I mean, sometimes I feel like I
yeah,
lean back because my back is sore from leaning,
yeah,
but
yeah, yeah.
that's
But it's
interesting.
also like folding arms. And if like somebody's mirroring your body language, that means they feel a connection to you. That means like they feel like they can trust you. They're like, different aspects to it. But I find it so fascinating just like studying how the human mind and like soul works. Um, and that's why like I'm always drawn to learning more about deep-rooted trauma, generational trauma, um, childhood trauma. And I love hearing people's stories because you can always like pick up on things.
Hmm.
And there's like, you see a pattern or you see something that they might not see because they're so deep in it. So
Hmm.
it's like being able to sit and have a conversation with them. And then, I always ask for like, can I give you some feedback? Can I make a suggestion? And then I point things out. And they're like, wow, I didn't think of it that way, or I didn't see it that way. And then like I'll do um I get downloads and stuff and I pick up on people's energies and like certain things. So I'll sit with that too and I'll have those conversations with them and like see what's coming through to share with them, and help guide them. So it's very fascinating and I just love it. And like I'm so grateful and blessed to be able to serve the community in that sense, and seeing a shift in them and what it creates for them just makes it all that worthwhile for me. And speaking of generational trauma, there was this study that was done with mice
Oh, I was
and
going to
they,
ask you to
yeah,
bring that up because
yeah,
that blew my mind because I think not
yeah,
everyone understands
yeah,
generational trauma
yeah,
and I didn't. And when you explained it to me, I was like, my mind was blown. So yeah,
yeah,
I want you to talk about the mice
yeah.
study. And then I also would love for you to talk about too how it affects our energy,
Hmm.
where I think a big reason why I started looking at healing my trauma is because I felt always exhausted. I felt so tired all the time. And I'm like,
Yeah,
well, I worked in like my health and fitness and that, like, I feel really good. I'm doing the exercise, I'm eating well. Like, I lost the weight. I feel better in my body. Why do I still feel so exhausted? So, yeah. So let's talk about the mice and
yeah,
generational trauma and how that can show up for people, so they have
yeah,
a better understanding of it. And then I want to talk energy too, because I know a lot of listeners, that is one of their biggest struggles is just lack of energy.
yeah. We'll definitely touch upon that, and I'll just give you like an example of also like childhood trauma and how that affects. So one example, I saw the study that they did. Somebody was talking about it, and she said they took a mouse, like two mice actually, and they let them go near like a cherry blossom tree. They did nothing. The second time, they shocked the the male mouse from like going there. And then they had that mouse reproduce with a female mouse, and they didn't do anything for the generations that followed. And it
And
took
they never did
eight,
anything to the female
no,
mouse,
like
just the
no,
male,
they
one
didn't they
male.
didn't
Okay.
shock the female. It was only the male. So that was half the trauma
Okay.
of what they did. And then they, had eight generations of mice with half that trauma from the father's side. It took eight generations for those mice to feel safe to go near that tree again.
Wow.
And nothing was done to the other like seven generations. They
Like
didn't
they were
shock them. They
never
didn't do
shocked.
no. All they did was place them in front of the tree, and they would not go near the tree out of fear that
Wow.
they picked up from like the father.
Wow.
And it wasn't even like, both parents' trauma. It was half the trauma, and it still carried on for eight generations until that like those mice felt that it was safe to go near that tree again.
And then they broke that is essentially like they
Yeah,
would
like
break
it took
that.
8 generations to break it.
Jeez.
Yeah.
Wow.
And that's what I like generational trauma. Like, I'll give you another example from I read It Didn't Start With You by Mark Wallen.
Mhm. Yes.
I hope
Yeah.
I'm getting that right.
Yeah.
Because I also read Inherited Trauma, and Van, that's by a different author. I have to come back to you with the author.
Okay. Yeah.
Um, so, and It Didn't Start With You. It was I really hope I'm telling you the right book because the two of them were so great that I kind of like interconnected them.
Intertwine them to, yeah.
Yeah, so I really hope I'm giving you the right book
Okay.
with the example right now because I don't want to take
We'll
credit
give
from
you
anyone.
grace if you
Yeah,
mess
yeah.
it up. We will give you grace.
Because I
Yes.
want to give proper credit where it's due. Um, so he had a patient that came in, and I believe at like he hit his 18th birthday, and all of a sudden he started to withdraw from everyone. He was doing poorly in school. He was always feeling cold. He was just very like depressed and like I believe he became like suicidal at some point. And he sat with him, they did sessions, and then long story short, it turns out that his uncle that nobody ever talked about, or because it was just too sad, um, froze to death. He got stuck in like snow. There was like a big, huge snowstorm, and he ended up dying in it. And no one ever brought it up again. No one spoke about it because it was such a traumatic event that they just tried to like shut it out because they thought, denial is bliss. And he actually like had him sit with his uncle that he's never met and like visualization, have that conversation with his uncle. And after he did that, and like he acknowledged his uncle and everything that his uncle was and what happened to him, all the symptoms disappeared and he was able to go back to his life and just to be who he was. And I believe it was because the uncle died when he was 18. So that's why the symptoms started up. Because if you think about it, like your
Oh.
energy, it's all residual. It's just like, for example,
So did the uncle
uh,
die at the age of 18?
I believe so, yeah. And that's why he picked up on the symptoms at the age of
At
18
18. Wow. And
because
that,
it just like it was frozen in time and it wasn't
yeah,
moving forward because no one was
was
acknowledging it or
no,
processing it.
they didn't heal from it. And so,
Yeah,
wow.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah. And it's like the same concept, like, you know, uh, let's say something traumatic happened to you on February 11th, 2005.
Hmm.
Unless you acknowledge and you process it, every February 11th, you're going to get that energy, like the residual of
Mm.
like, why do I feel so sad today?
Okay. That, so
Because your body keeps the score.
yes. Okay. So when
Yeah.
I was in therapy for like since 2010, and I worked
Hmm.
with Rhonda. She was amazing, and it was really like my first like look into this kind of work, and I'm
Hmm.
so grateful for it because I don't it would I think would have been a lot harder for me to get into this kind of work here without having that background with working with her. And I remember her saying that your body remembers. And so when my dad died in 2020, and it was very traumatic, I think, when you lose a loved one, that there is trauma, no
Yeah,
matter how they died, right?
of
Some can
course.
be
Yeah.
maybe more severe than others, especially when it's unexpected or it's just really, painful. And I remember her saying that because I would every year, the next year, and around the same time that everything led up to his death, my sisters and I would just get really, we would say we were in a funk. That's the word
Hmm.
that we would use. We're
Hmm.
just in a funk and we couldn't explain it. But that was the trauma that we experienced with my dad's death that we didn't process, and we didn't, because
Yeah.
I know we go through the different stages of grief, but
Yeah.
I totally avoided that whole first year. The whole first
Yeah.
year, I absolutely avoided. And I find now, since I've been working through, and you really inspired me actually with the one exercise that we did. And we can talk about that because I felt like that was so incredibly powerful, and beyond grateful for that from you. And I actually felt like I could really heal that part of the trauma that I experienced with my dad's death. And
Yeah.
I'm actually, I know this might sound weird, but I'm really curious to see when his anniversary comes up this year, how I'll respond to that. Will I feel a little bit different? That doesn't mean that
Yeah.
like we don't ever have grief or we don't
Yeah.
still miss him or loved ones and things like that. But I'm just, yeah, like I'm curious to see what that will look like.
It will, so just from my own experience, it will
Mhm.
be a realization. So like for me, um, there was something that happened. Well, there was a couple of things that happened around, I believe, like the month of December. And when December passed, I was like, why am I feeling this way? And like, I was feeling fine. And why am I feeling so withdrawn? Like it was like
Mhm.
leading up to that day.
Mm.
And then I was like, oh, because that happened on that day. And at that time, this is how I felt about it. So now it's coming up again. It's like the anniversary of that emotion, that label that I put on this memory is coming up again. And the residual is coming up to the surface. So by acknowledging it and sitting with it, and I'm like, okay, does it still make me feel this way? And it's also like the acceptance of it, like it happened and it's now in the past.
Mm.
What have I learned from it? What am I accountable for in what happened that I can take moving forward with me as a lesson so that the next year it rolls around, it doesn't feel as heavy, And how
Yes.
can I use that for future instances if this comes back around? How would I handle it differently? Because we're not the same person that we were like last year or even yesterday. We're constantly evolving, we're constantly learning, we're constantly doing things differently. Like, when they say, like, it's kind of like the telephone where, like, you start with a story, and by the time it gets to the last person, it's a completely different story.
Yeah.
That,
Uh-huh.
that's our life. Like, you're not doing, even if you're doing the same thing over and over again, you're getting different things out of it.
Yeah.
You're repeating the same thing every day, like brushing your teeth or whatever. You might switch it up and then all of a sudden start talking to yourself in the mirror about how amazing you are. You didn't do that yesterday or the day before, you know? So even though it's still the same experience in a sense, it's not. It's just like working through the residuals and the labels and the emotions we've
Mm.
placed on it and
What
what
meaning
are
we're assigning to it.
exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. And then it's like, okay, looking back at it now from like removing myself from being at the center of it, what was I accountable for in this? Why did I let it get such a big reaction out of me? And what's the root of it?
Mm.
Because for it to get such a huge reaction out of me and for me to go about it the way that I did, where is this coming from? Oh, it's
Mm.
coming from my childhood, or oh, it's coming from the fact that it's stacked of like feeling this way about it every single time that it's happened. Because even
Mm-hmm.
though it's happened in different, settings, different people,
Yeah.
it's still the same rooted, powerful charge that now I've labeled it with. And the more experiences I've had, the bigger the charge
Mm.
becomes.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like, okay, removing yourself from that, and now how can I make it so it no longer is charged
Yep.
to the point where you're getting a reaction out of me, or I'm giving you the power to
Mm-hmm.
get a reaction out of me.
Yes. So that's okay. So that's what when you're talking about when you sit in it versus like when you keep avoiding and pushing it
Yeah.
down. When you sit in it, those are the types of questions that you're asking yourself. Those are the types
Yeah.
of maybe like meditations or journaling that you're doing
Hmm.
that you're trying to really get to the root of it.
Yeah. Or even just like rewiring like your thought process. Like, when you
Yeah.
sit there and you're like, oh my God, why did I do that? Oh man, I wish I didn't say that. It's like, okay, but why? Why do you wish you didn't say that?
Yeah.
And just like questioning yourself. We're always talking to ourselves. That's where
We
we get
do.
like the best ideas and everything. So it's just about changing the conversation
Hmm.
from, instead of like berating yourself or making yourself, feel all these negative charges about yourself. How can I switch that to ask myself, like, okay, but why? And
Yeah.
then, like, a lot of the times, what I do is like I sit with my younger self
Hmm.
because it's like rooted in like childhood or generational. So I'm like, okay, as a kid, that had to come from like something I've experienced as a kid. And I just kept stacking to now that it's affecting me still as an
Yeah.
adult. So like I'll sit in front of like my younger self and I'll be like, hey, what's going on? Why are we feeling this way? And just like give her that support and that love and meet her needs so that she feels safe and opens up to what she's experiencing and what's going on. It's the same thing like, when you have conversations with your kids, you want them to open up and to feel safe and
Yeah.
comfortable to share with you. I do that with my inner child.
And how, when you first started doing that inner work with the inner child, um, how uncomfortable was it for you the very first time you did it? Like, were you like, am I doing this right? Is this what this means? Like, was it,
Yeah.
because it was really uncomfortable for me. I never
Yeah.
really understood it. And I'm like, you actually really helped give me clarity on visualization, on like, how do people go back and talk to their younger selves? Like, or how are they having these conversations with people they never met, like the 18-year-old and the uncle?
Yeah.
And what was really beneficial for me when I started practicing that is it doesn't necessarily mean like with that kid, the 18-year-old, like he never met his uncle, but I'm sure he maybe saw a picture of him somewhere, right, where he
Yeah.
could then maybe visualize, okay, obviously we didn't really have this conversation, but in your brain doesn't distinguish between reality and imagination, right? That's the
Yeah.
power in it, right, where
Yeah.
you
It's
can.
also like, when you're sitting in a meditation and like they're like, okay, visualize your happy place.
Mhm.
Same concept. What does your happy
Yeah.
place look like? You know what I
And
mean?
how do you feel when you visualize your happy place? It
Exactly.
changes the state of
Exactly.
how you, yes. And so
Yeah.
um and I want to go to, cuz I think some people really like examples, like concrete examples, and
Hmm.
I'm going to use my experience with you because you're the one who like helped me create this realization, and like for
Yeah.
me to step in my power and take my power back, and how we're talking about beliefs and meanings that we assign to it, and how do we break that cycle. And for me, when we chatted the other week, and I just, well, you got a download, which you could even like define what a download is. I did not know what a download was, but and you kind of felt what was coming up. Like I felt a little anxious. And when you were
Hmm.
talking about, the trauma and explaining it more to me and how it can manifest in people, my automatic thought went to one of my sisters. And I was like, I automatically felt like I had this responsibility that I needed to have her work with you and to get her this help, because I know that she is unaware and is not treating the actual symptom with her medical
Hmm.
anxiety. And so I just felt like this pressure, this huge pressure on me to have her like connect with you. And then what we did was we went through this exercise, and I learned the belief that I was holding on to and how I could actually stop that belief, right? And create a new one. And so I don't know if it would serve the listeners better for you to explain this or to kind of talk about like, how did you help me with that?
So I actually took up Mark Wolyn's program. He's super great about like talking about like childhood traumas and generational stuff like that. And one of the exercises he has us do, which I tweak a little bit because it depends on like what comes through for me and what I feel would serve whoever I'm speaking to. But he does do like a timeline jump kind of thing, and like he gets to the root of a memory, and then as you rewire that memory, so like all the things that you wish you would have said to the person in that memory that has caused
Mhm.
that trauma, and have you actually say it. So you're rewiring that memory into something that's beautiful or positive, so it no longer has that residual effect on you. And what I did with you, and we spoke about your sister and stuff, and then I told you that it's not for you, that's her journey. And she needs to, if you can't help someone unless they want to be helped,
Mhm.
and that's just from my own experience. And like, I know what they
Mhm.
need if they would just listen to me.
Yep.
Um,
I think we've
but
all
it's
been
so,
there.
yeah, it's so funny because I'm a projector. So
Mhm.
projectors need to wait for the invitation in human
Mhm.
design, if anybody's interested. Um, and I used to just be like, no, no, like I know what you need. I'm gonna help
Mhm.
you. And I would go into like savior complex,
Yeah.
and
That never lands, by the
truthfully,
way.
no,
No, it
because
does not land.
it was draining. It
Mhm.
was it just took so much energy from me, especially since I pick up on other people's energies.
Mhm.
So now like I learned to protect my energy from others, and to decipher what's mine and what's someone else's, because I would take on other people's energies and I didn't know what the hell was going on. And I would take them personal in a sense because I thought they were like that's what I was going through. Um, but what I told you about like you and your sister, like it has to come from your sister. Like you can't force someone to get the help that they need because they might not see it, and it's
Yep.
their own experience, and they get to have that experience for themselves. And I remember, I forgot where, but they were like, you're doing them a disservice when you try to, like, I'm going to put it in my own words, hijack their life for them.
Yeah.
Because if they don't use the tools and the resources to do the inner work and do it for themselves, you're hijacking those tools and resources from them. Because if
Right.
you're a constant safety blanket, you're always going to be there. And then when you're not, they're just going to fall flat on their face. But by them doing their own inner work and having their own experiences and learning from them, you're actually giving them like the tools. It's
Yeah.
like, I remember I had somebody say this to me once, like, you give a man a
A
fish or like
fish.
you teach them
Yes.
how to fish.
Yep.
Yeah.
I
And
love that. Yes.
it's so
Yeah.
true.
It is
Yeah.
so true. And I feel so passionate about that. That's the way I
Yeah.
teach my clients and students is I don't tell them what to do. I give them the
Yeah.
tools so they can
Exactly.
figure it out themselves, so they can
Exactly.
step into their power.
Exactly.
And I'm very, very, very big on that because I believe that everyone's capable of doing it. And
100%.
yes, we need help and guidance
100%.
along the way. I'm not saying do
Yeah.
it alone, but
Yeah. It's like a
giving them
therapist
those
has a
tools.
therapist. A therapist
Yes.
is not, all alone. No, they have their
Right.
own therapist. And
Right.
I feel like it's the same thing with healers and energy work and anything that you ever do. You always want that guidance for yourself because you're always learning and evolving, and there's so many different ways to go about it. And it's just about finding what works for you and what
Yes.
lands, because you can hear the same thing coming out of five different people's mouths, but it's not going to land as much as it landed with the one out of five,
Mhm. Yep,
you
I agree with
know?
that.
And that's how you needed to hear it. That's how you needed to see it. So we're all a constant work in progress. And it's not
Mhm.
like, you do this inner work and all of a sudden you're healed and that's it. It's over.
That's it. It's done.
No,
Like, that's it. Cross it off
no,
your
I
list. I know.
wish.
I wish too. I thought that. I was very naive. I was very naive when I decided to do this inner work, what we call
Yeah,
it. I was
yeah,
like, wow, I was not expecting it. I don't,
yeah,
and honestly, I was glad for my naivety. Is that a word for me being
yeah,
naive?
yeah,
Because I don't know if I would have taken that leap and
Yeah.
did start doing this inner work. And
Yeah.
I will say because I want to tie in some energy too. One of the reasons why I wanted to go through that exercise with you when I was feeling this like responsibility, and how you even said like it was so draining, like mentally
Yeah.
draining. And I felt the
Yeah.
same way too. I just felt this responsibility to change everyone and to show them this different way, because I chose a different path, and I see the
Hmm.
benefits of it, and I want that for everyone. I want that for everyone that I love, and my students and future students, everyone. And I realized how much it was draining me, and I felt really, really exhausted. And that is
Yeah.
really one of the reasons why I got so interested in working in this trauma work, because I kept feeling burnt out. And one of my friends said, I don't actually think it's burnt out. I think you're hemorrhaging energy in different areas of
Hmm.
your life.
Hmm.
And so that was one of the ways that I was totally hemorrhaging energy in my life, making me feel like I was burnt
Yeah.
out. And when I learned the belief that I was assigning, that I had this responsibility, and you really helped me to see that, where then I changed it, where it's not my responsibility. It's not mine to own. And I do have a responsibility to myself to protect my energy. And I do have a responsibility to share my lessons, but that
Yeah. Of
doesn't mean that I have to change everyone, because that comes down to the individual. They have to choose that. And so
course.
that's something that like has really served me so well and was so interesting, because one of my past memories, hello, Benny. Yes, yes. He's ready for his popsicle. So sure. Um, but what I realized is that I had this when I was a child, my mom, which I love her and she did the best she could with the tools that were given to her, the behavior that was modeled for her, use that quite a bit. And she would tell me and my sisters that, hey, when you have kids, they're your responsibility. And so, and I know that that wasn't her belief. She got that probably from her mom, and then got that from her mom, and probably
Hmm.
society, right? Of what
Yep.
women,
The
how
cycle.
women should be, right? With
Yeah.
children. And that was such a main role. Like that's what women should be doing, is having kids. And
Yeah.
when they're your kids, they're your kids. And so that was really powerful for me to go back to my past experience. And you really helped me with that. Like you helped me to get into the space of like first the deep breathing. And then you had me go back to a first memory that I could think of, where I remember having that responsibility put on me. And
Yeah.
then you had I had this conversation with my mom. Like I visualize it, even though like I never had that conversation. And I didn't choose to have that conversation with my mom in real life here either.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, because it wasn't necessary. Um, but I visualized that meeting that never happened in my past. And I also was able to have a lot of compassion and love for my mom as well. So that was really cool when you had me picture my mom crying in the corner, because
Yeah.
she also had this belief when we were children. And I
Yeah.
was able to go and hug her and tell her she's doing the best she can and all of those things. So then when I went back to that memory that I remember my mom telling me, I could stick up for Emily, but in a really loving and compassionate way. And that
Yeah.
is what I thought was so powerful. And so I just wanted to like share that with listeners, because if this is completely new to them, I remember when I first started learning about any of this work, I was so confused and so overwhelmed. And I'm like, what does this even mean? But using just real life examples, I feel like can hopefully
Yeah.
give some clarity to that. And I always tell people too, whenever they do this inner work, like just allow yourself to be bad at it in order to be good at it.
Yeah.
And it is uncomfortable, and but I realize the impact that it has, and how you really can break generational cycles, for yourself, but also for your future, your kids and their future. And that just is just such important work. And I'm so grateful that you're willing to do that work, because we do need people like you that can really help us in a really supportive and safe way. And I
Yeah.
felt that from you from day one. Like I didn't even know you. And when I bumped into you the first time, I was sharing with you when you tell me you get downloads. And I was like, oh, okay. Well, I just had this dream about my dad, and he was so happy. It's the first dream I ever had of him. And because I will have people who pass that will
Yeah.
come into my dreams.
Yeah.
It is the first one that I just felt like he was so at peace. And when you were just like telling me like things that my dad was saying, I just like it felt real. It felt so authentic, and I felt so seen and so safe with you. And now I tell you all this stuff and I'm like, but that's really how you made me feel, because I
Wow.
felt understood, I felt seen, and I felt safe. And women, we absolutely need that. It's not a want, it's a need. And you do that so beautifully. And I never felt judged by you. I never felt like I was crazy or anything like that. It was just work that I didn't know that I needed. And so I'm so grateful for that. And I was able to take some of those tools that you taught me, which is really cool. Like that I could start doing some of the things myself, which has been really awesome as well. Um, but yeah, so I know we've been talking a while and we could probably go on forever. And I would love feedback from you guys, the listeners, to let us know like what were your thoughts, what were your takeaways. If you want more, like let us know, because I'm sure we would absolutely bring another episode. And Rania actually had a really amazing idea about doing like a roundtable discussion on YouTube. So stay tuned for some really awesome things that are going to be coming up.
Yeah.
But I would love for you to let anyone know who would love or who's interested in doing some of this inner healing trauma work. Where can they
Hmm.
find you? And then also, I heard that there might be a free gift that you're offering as well. So if you could speak to that, I would love that.
Yeah. So, I currently am on Instagram. I don't have a website yet. So I will share my Instagram handle with you so you can drop it in the show notes. And I am currently offering for any of your listeners a free 30-minute session that they're more than welcome to DM me and we can have a session and conversation. I will let you guys know I'm not a licensed therapist, and I will be giving you the tools and resources that I've used to do the inner work and heal on my own journey. And if you feel that you might need more support, I'm happy to help, or like a licensed therapist if that's the route you choose to take instead. But I am currently offering free 30-minute sessions for anyone who's interested or wants to, like, if they have any more questions and want to get to know a little bit more about what I do and how I do it. So, yeah, that's a little
Yes.
freebie for
Yes,
your
I
listeners.
love that. Oh my goodness, thank you. And I already, when you shared that with me, I was already texting people. And had to remind myself it's not my responsibility. However, I am responsible for at least sharing,
So,
right? And that's
of
what I'm
course.
choosing
Yeah.
to do is
And you
share.
also do it by example. So, like,
Mhm.
by you doing the inner work and like people seeing the change in you and like your loved ones, like, they see the shift.
Yeah.
So then they start wondering, like, oh, how did she shift?
Hmm.
But I will say one more thing about energy, because like I gave
Yes.
you a perfect example of it. So the reason like why you're feeling tired and exhausted and burnt out is because you've held on to that energy for so long, and
Hmm.
now it's like slowly trickling out into like this bucket of release. And
Yes.
it's like, it's just like when you leave the water, like you do the little, and the water, you close the thing but there's still a leak coming out. So that's like your energy. It's like slowly leaking for release. And that's why like you're feeling so exhausted by it, because you've held on to it so long. Or like, when you hold on um like a baseball bat, and like, you just like you're holding on so strong,
Yeah.
and then when you finally release it, like all your fingers and everything gets so stiff because you've had it in that position for so long, even though it was only like a couple of minutes or whatever. But because it's stiffened up and like you're holding on to this energy, you're holding on to it for like dear life because you're afraid if you release it, then it's just gonna explode. So the fact that it's
Yes.
like slowly trickling out and like little droplets, that's like because you're still holding on,
Yeah.
but it's also leaking because it needs release, and that's where the exhaustion comes from.
Yeah. Yeah. And I realized I think I had to ask you that. I was like,
Yeah.
so I did this, I took a salt bath and I did this, meditation and I went back to some former memories and then I cried. It was an amazing experience that I had. And then I felt lighter. Like after it coming out, especially with your exercise I did with you, I definitely felt lighter. And it was like I couldn't really explain it. I was like, I know something was fixed, but I couldn't really put a finger on it. But I did realize that a couple days I felt a little extra tired and I felt kind of a little bit in a funk, but that makes so much sense because you healed something, so that takes energy to heal.
Yeah.
And you were so used to thinking a certain way where you're not anymore. So there's a little bit of like confusion there
Yeah.
and definitely taking some energy. And so
Yeah.
that's such a great point to say that so people know when you are changing beliefs and stories and healing. Yes, in the long term, you're going to be getting more energy, but maybe in the middle of it, it might sometimes feel a little worse before it gets better. I don't know if I really want to even use that because I did
Yeah.
automatically feel lighter after. But I realized like I was like, oh man, like I'm still feeling a little tired. And then I can go to all or nothing where then I'm like, oh my gosh, I want to heal all of my trauma. I want to and I also have to be like, okay, let's pace it. It's not a
Yeah.
race. And like you
No.
said, it doesn't just solve everything. Like there's still other things in your life that,
Yeah.
like learning how to self regulate, right? And remembering those tools to do that because we do have emotions that not all of them are coming from trauma and past trauma,
Yeah.
right? So just remembering those tools as well. But okay, well, my dog needs out, and I'm sure Ben's going to come in here another time. So, but please give us feedback. Let us know,
Yes, please.
because that's how we can better serve you. And I'm just really excited. Thank you so much. Like, seriously, thank you so much. How do you feel? Do you feel like for your first time, would you
No,
do it
I
again?
like, yeah, of course,
Okay.
please.
Okay.
Anytime. I
Okay.
I love doing this stuff.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, thank you so much. And I always love to leave my podcast with life is always happening for you. And I know you believe that as well. So, all right, guys. Well, thank you so much. And I will leave all of Ranya's information in the show notes so you can find her on social media. And please grab your free gift. Like, don't be an idiot. Just kidding. Don't, I'm just messing with you, but I'm really not. Like grab this free gift and just dip your toes into it and see if it's for
Yeah,
you
yeah,
and just see what's the worst that can happen, right? It's not for you and that's okay, right?
yeah. It's
Then you
all an
know. Yes,
experience.
it
Yeah.
is. So, all right, well guys, I'll see you next week and have a fantastic rest of your day. Bye.
Bye, guys.